total process time, right? So let's do our little thing and make a blue just because we do like that. Their inputs, and I want that to stand out. All right, so now they're blue. Good. So it's a very simple model, but it's a model that carries a lot of weight. And so we want to understand where to focus our time, right? Yes.
So in the CDS page,
Did you just change the colors? Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, so in the CDS case, instead of this and then summing them all up, you might have like, you know, total customers in one input, percentage of light versus percentage of heavy, the dollar amount associated with that, and you multiply all these things together to get a total final dollar amount, right? Any of those inputs would be wrong or right at some uncertainty. So that exact same process is what we're doing here, right? So, yes?
Sorry, step 3 says 38 hours, but in your diagram it says 29 for document verification. Is that?
It's, okay, sure.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll do that just to make it consistent. But the reason I don't care about that is because whenever I look at a model, I'm concerned with the structure of the model, not the inputs. We're going to come back and refine those inputs. So in that description page, we had a lot of good information about how these different process times vary, and that's what really matters to this model. But okay, so let's start with that 38 there. Is everything else consistent?
No.
No.
All right, let's just make it consistent. This is 8. Yeah. All right. So now it's consistent with the picture. Okay. So to our Monte Carlo question, we know what our forecast is, what our objective function is, right? What is it? What's our objective function here? Our forecast.
The total time.
92.
Yeah, total time. The total number of hours
Objective
invested
function
in
is the
this process.
92 total time.
So let's identify that.
We changed
So
it
I'm going
to
to click
total
on
to
it and
cycle
say
time.
define forecast. I'm going to call it total time. And it should turn bright blue, right? So that's the thing we care about. Where is our uncertainty coming from in this?
Oh, based on the description.
Yeah, those 6 inputs, right? These 6 blue inputs.
What was the
It
input?
must come from the inputs. It's the uncertainty in this total time is simply the uncertainty that comes from each of these inputs. How wrong we are about each of those inputs. What did you name it? Sorry. I just call it total time.
In the name or units? In the name?
Both of those are simply for labeling purposes. So I almost always leave units blank. And then total time, all that's for is it'll pop that description up in the different wizards and graphs that you make. All right, so that's what I care about. What is the first thing that comes to my head when I look at a model after I've identified my objective function? It's where is this error coming from? Which one of my inputs is driving the error? If I know nothing about those inputs, meaning I haven't gone back to talk to anybody in the organization, I haven't looked at historical data, I haven't done anything. If I know nothing about those inputs, the simplest way to understand what might be contributing to variance is just that up and down 10%. Remember we did that? So let's just do that again. So I'm going to run a tornado chart. This is the easiest way to get started on Monte Carlo simulation. Let's just find out what matters. Oh, sorry, let me close this up.
And so you're running a tornado chart on the total, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll say tools, more tools, tornado analysis. And again, I'm going to say this every time. The help screens really are helpful. So if you get lost, like, I promise, like really, they're helpful. I would never read a help screen on a Microsoft product. This is not a Microsoft product. All right, so our forecast is total time. Our input variables, I'm just going to say add precedents and let it trace up and find all those precedents. But you should be unsurprised that it gets each one of those steps. So anything in the model, it'll trace through all those formulas and get you a list of all the inputs that drive that one calculation. Add precedents. You could have done add range as well if you like, but add precedents is so easy. It just does it all for you.
I
And
get
then it
that.
tells us down below that there's 6 input variables,
I have
which
34.
would be 6 steps. Okay, so the simplest way is I could say, I could wiggle these simply up and down 10%, which is what I'm doing. Just wiggle them up and down. What if I was wrong on those estimates by 10%, which is a reasonable amount of error in any analysis? You could reasonably expect to be wrong by 10% error. So it's just going to wiggle each one up and down individually, each one up and down 10%, and tell me how dramatically that affects the total time. Okay. So this gives me my first hint at what to focus on. Right. So let me add a layer of complication to what we're talking about.
Great.
Again, I always just think in like pictures and graphs and things. So here's some number line of and so that document verification. So document verification had a baseline value of 38, right? So I'm going to call that document verification. And so what we did is we increased that 10% to here, and we decreased it 10%.
Make sure you look on your notes.
And we got these values. 3420 and 41. Okay, so this is just a simple number line of hours, right? Units are hours. And all we did is we said this document verification step, wiggle it up 10%, wiggle it down 10%,
Oh, yeah, okay.
and then this is the resulting total time impact. So we're simply wiggling that up and down 10% shows us that it makes a pretty dramatic impact to total time. Okay? So this up and down 10% is conflicts with an idea I told you last time, where I said when we use that data table, we didn't just wiggle it up and down 10%. What do we do? Do you guys remember? We tried to pick a reasonable range, remember? We're like, instead of this arbitrary 10%, let's pick a reasonable range by which this thing varies. So it may be true, in fact, we have information. Let's go to this description.
This is the tornado.
Document verification. It says blah, 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 blah. This step of verification usually takes between 2 and 4 days, but 2 out of 10 times the step takes between 4 and 6 days for suspended loan. Right? So like that's essentially an exception item. So what this is saying is reasonable values for this 16 to 32 is like somewhere in here. This is that 16 to 32. Or 32 to 48. Or 32 to 48. Right, so we have this conflict. We have this natural conflict always between this like easy way to look at something versus how we actually might expect this thing to reasonably vary, okay? Ideally, when we do this wiggle thing with the tornado chart, we want to do it with respect to the reasonable range, so this green stuff, and not just this arbitrary up and down 10%, okay? So that's our goal. We're looking to redo this tornado chart, but now with respect to its actual reasonable range. How this value may actually vary. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me take a simpler one.
32 to 38.
Okay, so loan disbursement usually takes 2 days, 16 hours, and it's normally distributed with a standard deviation of 4 hours. So let's look at that one now with that same kind of approach.
What is it? Loan disbursement.
All right, so loan disbursement,
Where's the loan disbursement at?
where is it? 8. So our base value is 8. So I'm gonna plug it in right there. Base. So that was our first guess, right? So we could do that up and down 10% thing if we wanted to, which is what we did here. But research shows, or perhaps you dug into your workflow model, a lot of workflow systems, you can have some item like a loan, and it'll digitally transfer from desk to desk, right? And it'll record times. So you could pull those times and look at historical data to see exactly how many hours were looked at. So we did that, and we put them in a big histogram and tried to see the disbursement, and it turned out that it's normally distributed at 16 hours with a standard deviation of 4. So it's very different than our base case model, right? It turned out that the historical values show
Loan-based disbursement.
16 is the mean,
Loan disbursement is at
and
8.
it's normally distributed, something like that, right? So this happens a lot when you're doing process design, right? So you go out and you try to look at what a typical throughput time is or a typical cycle time, and then you start digging into the data and you find that it's wildly different. This should not surprise you. This does not mean you did a bad job. This is an insight into an organization that doesn't know what they're doing, right? Which means there's a good reason for you to do that, right? So expect this all the time. The difference between how long people think it takes and what might have driven your first estimate about what's going on, and then what data actually shows, right? So there are a lot of ways to get data in process flow. The first place to always look is workflow systems, if one exists. The second place to look is other IT systems that might have captured times, so long as you can find somebody who actually knows how they're captured. And then the third way is you got to do like you can use scanners to capture time. You can observe people doing their job. Whatever gets it done to get you a clear picture of how long something takes.
So the blue is what actually the correct
The
way?
blue is our first guess. Our base case is always just the first estimate. We've got to build this model with some estimate,
And the
right?
green is what?
have
with the
6.
And the
deficiency.
green, yeah, the green is what our data shows.
Oh, here it is.
So it turned out that our first guess was just wrong. So we have to be comfortable with this in spreadsheet modeling all the time, right? When I look at a model, I don't even care what those base values are, because I know in my head that this is just so that I could build the structure of the model, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to scrutinize every single one of those inputs. And it's okay, right? It's easy to scrutinize inputs, and it's easy to update them. So don't feel beholden to initial guesses when you're modeling, because that just leads to bad models, right? Yes.
When you get these base models, is that like based off of like interviewing the customers and they say, how long does it take to interview the customer inquiry?
Yeah.
And they say, oh, it takes us an hour or so.
Yeah. So typically the
That's what
way
you plug in there as your base model.
exactly. So typically the way like an operations consulting project goes is you come in and your executive sponsor has a pain. It's like, they'll give you something big like we keep losing customers to whatever their next competitor. Like why, right? So if part of my hypothesis of why is that you guys are too slow and people just get tired of waiting, so they go to your competitor. Then my job is to dig into this process, lay it all out, and then sit with the executive sponsor and whoever he designates or she designates, and say, like, what do you think this takes, right? Like, how long does it take to fill, right? And typically they'll give you some answer, or wait a day and get answers from other people, and typically they'll be wrong, right? But the important part is not that they give you the right answer, it's that you get the structure, that you understand the structure, okay? And then recognize that it's up to you then to identify which of these things are wrong, but more importantly, which of these things drive the most variability so you can spend more time there, right? Remember we looked at that tornado chart and it like 2 or 3 things drove the most variability? I want to focus on that stuff. So when I look at this model blind, I'm just looking for clues on where to focus my time. So it should be unsurprising that these big steps right here are potentially take a lot of time, right? So I do that, and I recognize, and I go through, and I maybe can look at historical values or do research or call an expert or whatever, and I should be unsurprised that this base case and this arbitrary 10% wiggle didn't even get us close to a reasonable range, right? So if we wanted to wiggle and test a reasonable range, we should have tested something like this, maybe plus or minus 2 standard deviations, okay? So that would get us closer to understanding the true variability that is contributed from this loan disbursement process. Yes?
When you say 2, do you mean going from like 4 to 8 for the standard deviation on each side?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. And that's subjective. Okay. So there is an easy way to do that with Monte Carlo simulation. This is basically like this entire class is me being like, here's this really hard thing. Oh wait, Monte Carlo simulation can do it easily. All right. So if we can go through and layer assumptions on top of each of those steps, we can do that tornado chart thing again, but now do it in an intelligent way. Instead of just doing it by wiggling stuff, let's do it with respect to those probability distributions that we build in there. Those probability distributions that already have the historical data represented in them, or have our research represented in them. They're truly reflective of the organization, instead of someone's guess, right? So the way I want you guys to start thinking is you just want to build the structure and be okay with guesses and recognize that you're going to fix them, okay? So this is a good thing. This is normal. So now I can put that assumption in, right? If my data shows that that's how that varies, I'll have that reflected in my model. So I'm going to go crystal ball, define assumption, normal distribution, and it was 8 with a standard deviation of, what was it? Of 4? All right, and then I hit enter and it fixed the
That's on the loan.
and that was reflected in the description.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. All I did is I said, this is the loan disbursement, and my teammates did the research and found out that moving funds to the applicant's bank usually takes 16 hours, blah, 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 with a standard deviation of 4. So now I can update my model. I'm going to change it to 16 as the base case. The base case really doesn't matter, and I'll show you why in a second. So now it's 16 with the standard deviation of 1.
So what?
Yeah, divine assumption and then normal distribution. Just like before. So we're just applying a distribution on top of that.
What number are you defining your side? What number are you defining your assumption? What cell are you clicked on?
Oh, it was
The high number?
yeah, step 6, thank you. This guy right here. Okay. So in the description tab, they gave us the historical, the research from the historical values. Okay? Yes.
You put 4 because that's where you're starting off of, correct?
I put 4 because that's what my research showed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
We're just like pretending like all the stuff in the description tab is my consulting team going off and doing research and figuring out what these actual steps take. Yeah. Yes.
If you define an assumption, how do you get rid of it if it doesn't have?
Okay, thank you for asking that because I forgot to say it before. When you're running Monte Carlo simulations and you're putting stuff on top, that's crystal ball metadata. So you can only copy and paste and clear it with the crystal ball copy paste.
Oh, okay. I'm
sorry I didn't tell you that earlier.
That's it's not cool, man. We're over here punching numbers. Just kidding.
All right, so we can keep on going
So
with
this
this,
is what he's
and we
talking
can
about,
keep
right?
on layering
Where you
the
get
assumptions.
copy and
Remember, there's
clear,
no
but you have to-
downside
but
to
there
layering
wasn't
too
that
many
one. That's
assumptions.
not the right.
We simply might find that we spent a whole lot of time doing research on something that didn't really matter. Okay? So continue through with the description and try to layer on assumptions to all those other steps. Okay?
Standard deviation. Yeah.
So I'll do one more with you. So in the customer inquiry part, the step could be a phone call, blah, blah, blah,
So
blah.
we change it, right?
Historical data indicates the cycle time is log normally distributed with a mean of 1 hour, standard deviation of 0.25 hours. Now, log normal distributions are a weird statistical distribution. I suggest you do not use statistical distributions unless you have a really good reason to. Just for the learning example, this is good because it forces you to use other distributions. But really all that matters isn't necessarily what this fancy, it's like a skewed normal distribution. Doesn't matter so much what this is, but that captures the idea of how long this thing takes, right? The shape is what matters, right? So what did it say? It said it was log normal,
1 hour.
mean of 1 hour, standard deviation of 0.25.
So customer.
Log normal. Mean of 0.25. So log normal versus normal distributions are useful in a lot of data because data tends to be naturally skewed when you're measuring magnitudes. So to understand what I mean by that is like, imagine I was trying to write a distribution of, I don't know, wealth in Seattle, right? So here's this is dollars, wealth. And most people are somewhere in this bulge in Seattle, right? And then there's like the Starbucks people and then the tech entrepreneurs. And then like right here is Bill Gates, right? Like way out there. So because you can't, often when you're measuring things, you can't or typically don't have negative values, but can you have skewed values? This is what this like log normal thing kind of represents. So that's the motivation behind something like that. So we'll hit OK. And again, when we go back to the tornado chart, we care about this reasonable range, right? Which is something like that. It's pretty unlikely that I'm in these tails. So if I wanted to talk about wiggling this input over its reasonable range, it would reasonably be anywhere from like 0.65 to 1.4, right? So then I would wiggle that and see how dramatically that changes cycle time. So keep on going and do all the rest of them. I'll do them here as well. And then we can redo our tornado chart.
It's a loan application. Loan application. Staff oversees the This step takes no more than 1 week, 40 hours. Make sure you look at your homework. Which one is it? 40 hours. 24. 40. What was that? What was loan application? This is number 2, right? This is the loan. Oh, you already got that one done? Loan application.
It's like 8 hours.
Oh, you put 40, 24, 40.
How do you make something like 80%, 20%?
Yeah, I want to find an easier way to do that one. So let's figure that out.
You do the average first, and then
So one way you could do that is you could add.
And he did 40, 24, 40.
You know what? If you guys don't mind, I don't like that we're teaching this like weird, complicated bimodal thing.
we second that.
So for this one, what's that?
She said a curriculum.
Well, so for the purpose of the tornado chart, I'd rather just a simple one, and then we'll layer the weirder thing on top. So for this one, let's just do triangular. 2, 4, 6. Let's just do triangular, where this is.
Is it 8, 24,
2, 4, 6, so 16, like this. 16 hours, 32, 48. Because I want this to be more concrete.
What did you call triangular? What? 32, 40?
48.
16, 32, 40.
Oh.
Did he change it?
No, he went right here like this. 16,
I don't know.
It's built into your spreadsheet,
32,
20%.
40.
Well, because I using these types in there.
Oh, no, that's just cell formatting.
Oh, no.
We could do it with clever formulas, but it'll kind of obscure the idea.
No matter 8 hours.
All right, so and let me show you one more cool thing about crystal ball is if you've gotten to the steps 4 and 5, the instructions say that there's historical data, and so we just have a list of data. Crystal Ball has a tool that'll actually show us distributions from historical data called the batch fitting tool. So let me just demonstrate how to do it. If I go Crystal Ball, tools, oops, click the wrong button. Batch fit. Batch fit. And basically what this will do is it will create histograms of lists of data and then put distributions on top and ask you if you like them. Okay. But the nice thing is that it visualizes data so that you could do whatever you then feel like.
You have to select that data first.
It doesn't matter because it's going to ask you to do it. So I'm just going to select these two. Just loan application and loan underwriting. Forget about the loan closing one because I created that one. And tell it that the data is in columns. The top row has headers. I'm going to do it in the current workbook. And that's it. So if I hit run, sorry, I forgot a checkbox.
Okay.
Oh, no.
That's what you get for going too fast. That shit happens.
It's not because he's going fast. It's just
It's too much, man.
big data.
Big too much, man.
Did you get your batch fit to work?
Looks like
No, mine was.
it looks like you might need a new computer there. A little bigger processor. And now you need a new battery. Jeez.
What?
You got all kinds of problems over there.
Can someone rush me? Do you have these on? Can you rush me through them? Just go step by step. Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just read it off.
Okay, customer inquiry is 1.
All right, I'll just do it.
Oh, it's 0.25 on the first one.
All right. I'm gonna do something just to teach the point, because I don't want you to watch me put in all these assumptions. So I'm just gonna put normal distributions on all of them. Just to put distributions on with whatever pops up. So imagine that this is all like accurate, blah, blah, blah. Just so that we have assumptions and I can make that point that I was making earlier.
Oh, he's just going to run it. So he's just going to run a tornado chart afterward. So what's the loan underwriting?
All right, sorry, fast forward. So now you have all of these probability distributions that are a result of either historical values, experts, or whatever. And so now we can ask this legal question one more time, but more specifically, with respect to the reasonable ranges, right? All this thought that went into these probability distributions. So we're going to rerun that tornado chart. With respect to total time, I'm going to add all my assumptions and only my assumptions. And then now I'm going to, instead of deviate by percentage, that up and down 10%, I'm going to select percentiles of the variables. And what that's saying is, where's my green? What that's saying is here you have this variable, this assumption, right? And you can assign percentiles, right? So this would be like the 10th percentile here, and this would be like the 90th percentile. So now we're going to wiggle up and down with respect to those percentiles. So for every single distribution, no matter what its shape is, Crystal Ball is going to dig into that distribution and find the 90th percentile and the 10th percentile. Why 90 and 10? Because they're kind of at the end, but not at the extremes. Okay? You can change that if you like 20, 80 more or whatever. But the idea is that those assumptions, those distributions that you put on top of yourselves, those represent some reasonable range. And so now we're going to wiggle with respect to that reasonable range. Okay? So you should expect this tornado chart to look different from the previous one, right? Because the previous one, we were just taking this potentially wrong base case value and wiggling it up to 10%. Why? Because we didn't have any more information than that. But if you do, then go by the assumptions. Then wiggle up to the top and the bottom percentiles of those assumptions.
Yeah.
Because you got to have only assumptions in that list. Because if you had an input without an assumption, and you can see if it's green next to it. If you had an input next to assumption, there are no percentiles. So it doesn't let you. Yeah, so remove it. So just remove it from that stream. So let me show you. In case that's confusing. So if I went tornado analysis in input variables, if I say add precedence or something, so there's this one that does not have an assumption on it, and you can tell because it's a square cell instead of a full distribution symbol, it will not let me do percentiles. So all you got to do is click on it and remove select, and then it will. Okay. So now this tornado chart, exact same thing, but now with respect to its own reasonable ranges, gives us a much clearer idea of contribution to variance. What does that mean to you as a decision maker? Well, it means that those top steps. So like we could even we could almost ignore underwriting and customer inquiry. Where we want to go, where the low-hanging fruit is in document verification and loan application, and potentially loan closing. That's where you spend your time. That's where you do your process redesign. That's possibly where you look for exception item processing that might be holding things up. And then finally, we have this model built. So now we can see what the actual variability is in cycle time, right? So, and again, remember I put like junk assumptions on, so it won't necessarily match yours. But the idea still holds. We have some adequate number of trials, hit go. And then you can see that distribution of cycle time based on those assumptions. So back to our question of our performance target of 96. If you want to ask that question, how often are we hitting our performance target? That means that this upper threshold must be less than 96. You can either drag it over or just type in into this bar, 96. And so 82% of the time, based on my junky assumptions, 82% of the time we hit our cycle time, right? So that's a lot more intelligent analysis than just that point kind of verification. Okay. And so you can ask any number of questions. What's our typical cycle time? Well, you might report that as the mean or the median. So if I go split view, I have access to those. You could label it if you want, just by double clicking. What I like to do is I often use 80%. I use 80% ranges. So that typically makes a lot of sense to me for projects that I do. But it depends on the context and whatever question you're trying to answer. The point is, you got to push the organization to get you the information to do this, and then you got to press the organization to ask an intelligent question. Not does our process work, but like how often does our process work? How often are we in compliance of our performance target? What is the typical range? More specific questions like this. And that's what will get you closer to intelligent operation. Right? Yes.
I could see how this works for that, but for the CBS case, this is more of a process analytics. How can you tie in the money?
Same way. So earlier we were doing this exact same idea on NPV, on an NPV model, right? And so the idea was all those inputs that led to NPV could be wrong by some amount. So the difference is often in money situations there isn't historical data to back up those assumptions, but it's pretty easy to find them elsewhere. But it's the exact same process. It's like you could almost not even tell me what the model is, as long as you point to that thing you care about. You can do this whole process, right? You can do it blind, because when you do it, you care about that thing. You run a tornado chart. You figure out what's at the top of the tornado chart. Throw in the assumptions. Rerun the tornado chart with respect to the assumptions and their reasonable range. If you like at that point, you might say to yourself, well, because these top three have such a dramatic impact, then I'm going to go back and scrutinize those assumptions and those inputs a little bit further, and then run the Monte Carlo simulation. You should be, as long as you have a clean base case model, it doesn't matter what the environment is, financial or operational or whatever. But the point is that you must have a base case model where you can identify both the inputs as well as like at least one of those final outputs that you care about. Okay. So with respect to the customer loss question that I'm asking you, it's the same idea as this. Instead, you would have a bunch of the factors from the case all kind of multiplied together to get this final dollar amount. And that final dollar amount is what you're going to forecast, and just assume, and I'm going to ask you to assume 10% error, up or down 10% error. Okay. So what you could do is you can put a triangular distribution on each one of these, where the upper range is 10% higher, lower range is 10% lower, and do this exact same process to answer that question. You know, what do I expect, or what is the distribution of potential loss, and then where is that variability come from?
You're gonna give us the assumptions or?
No, I'm not. I'm simply giving you that prompt. I'm asking you to use the assumption that your error is plus or minus 10%. Just stick with that simple assumption.
For all of it.
For all of it.
Okay.
Because what I care is that you go through this process. The fact that the assumption is this particular distribution or that's a moot point. It's just like you click a different button, right? But what's important to me is that you get this idea. And if it's not perfectly clear, we're going to keep coming back to it because I think it's that important. Next session, we're going to learn Tableau, of course, and I'll do a full refresh of this, and we'll talk through it again on a different model. By the time you leave me, you're going to be able to. My intention is that you walk into an environment, you can break it up into intelligent process steps. You can identify the stakeholders, the roles and responsibilities, and the information flow for each step, and then attack it however you want. And then from a modeling perspective, when you attack it, I want you to be able to take somebody's base case model, identify what you care about, label that as a forecast, and then go through this whole process. Okay. You want me to walk through it one more time?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I look at this model blind. Imagine there's no green stuff on it, no blue stuff. This is all blank. I don't want to press clear because then I have to put it all back. And I don't want you to watch me do that. All right, so I look at this blank model and I say, first step is I say, what are my inputs? What are my outputs? Right? So anything that's an input, I immediately make blue according to good modeling standards. By the way, that modeling breakdown PowerPoint has all those kind of like client expectations in there. So I immediately identify what the inputs are and then what my key outputs are, or my objective formula or objective formulas. You need at least one. You can have multiple if you like. And I make that blue. I make that a forecast, right? So at this point, I have a blank model with just one forecast or two forecasts. If I had no idea what was going on, I could start by simply doing this base case deviation thing. If I did have an idea about the uncertainty in my assumptions, I could layer them on and then continue on with the same process of a tornado analysis and then finally Monte Carlo simulation. Your Monte Carlo simulation with that big forecast graph is kind of like the last step, right? That's like the final output. But it's a very iterative process, right? So remember that if you decide that document verification is so important and you go and like scrutinize and then update your document verification assumption, you got to rerun your Monte Carlo simulation to reflect that, right?
Can you do that forecast again?
Sure. Well, so I was saying you start with the forecast, and that's just clicking on the cell that's your like final calculation you care about, and define forecast. So we've only used define forecast and define assumptions. That's all we've used on this. Okay? And then it's up to you to use a sufficient number of trials. And typically 500,000 is plenty for almost any model I've ever seen. And it's not that onerous to your computer. The worst computer, it just means you watch it for a minute as it runs. And I don't want to add anything else. I think if you walk away with that, then you've like, that's what I want you to have for this class. Okay? And you can. Good. So I have an assignment posted for you, and it's just a walkthrough. It's another model and a walkthrough that model. So hopefully that makes this a little more comfortable. I recommend you wait a couple days and then do it to like force your brain to keep that. You know what I mean? Like if you walk away and wait 2 weeks, all the stuff is going to disappear. So wait a day or two and do that assignment, and then I'll put a clearer assignment description for the case quantification. Okay. So you'll have 2 Monte Carlo assignments to take home. One that is very clear with its steps, and the other one where I say, just calculate this thing and tell me. Okay. Yes.
I know we have a video, but you have like a YouTube video to go through it.
I don't, but I think that would be a good idea. Was it in this class somebody talked to me said said there was thinking about software or another professor who did that. If you guys know what the, like how to do that, let me know and I'll do it.
Our professor was the problem with, it was quarter screen.
Ooh.
Screen.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll talk to him and do it then. Yeah, I'll talk to him and then post one of like me really cleanly being like, beep, beep, beep. Does he talk over it as well?
Yes.
He does? Okay, awesome.
And I think he uses like the same one for other classes. Ours, the scope of ours was a little less, and so he kind of went into the 52. We just had one that he did for all of his class.
Okay. Awesome.
And this is standard deviation.
And you threw it on YouTube? You said? Okay, I can totally do that. Awesome. So that's my homework. And then I'll have that to you within a couple of days so that you can follow it when you do the stuff that I assigned you. Good? So if this feels useful, I hope this does feel useful.
Yeah.
If this feels like, blah,
Very
I don't get it, we will make it clear over the next few classes. So don't worry about that. You guys were awesome today. Thank you so much. Have a great lunch, and I will see you. I don't know what we're going around about that.
You have homework.
Right. So now you know.